Welcome to Season 2 of the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. I'm Em, a sexologist and kinkster. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize desire in all of its forms, including darker desires. Each episode, we dive deep into the psychology of desire with a sexpert, everyday kinkster, or a kink expert. This is an independent podcast. To support it, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at psychologyofdesire.com, where you'll also find deep dives into desire and surveys that you can participate in. You can also sign up there to get the podcast delivered directly to your inbox when it's released. If you'd like to support the podcast, please consider checking out the brands that support the Erotic Realm. There's ForteFemme, whose tech ring offers fascinating insights into sexual health by tracking erection quality and nocturnal function. Splash Blanket, who create luxurious waterproof blankets designed for comfort, intimacy, and real-life messes. ProDX Health, who offer discreet, at-home STI testing. While Karoo and Lovents make premium pleasure technology, from couple toys to long-distance interactive devices. Then there's Lioness, who are doing something truly unique in sex tech, using biofeedback and orgasm data to help people better understand their arousal. I'm also partnering with Flow and Desire, science-backed libido support supplements designed to support sexual vitality and well-being. These are brands that I find genuinely interesting, science-backed, and I've used them myself, so they come with my recommendation. You can find the links to all of them in the episode description. If you try them, use the links below. It supports the show at no extra cost to you. And now, back to today's conversation. The following conversation is with Midori, one of the world's pioneering sexuality educators, author of The Seductive Art of Japanese Bondage, creator of ForteFemme, and one of the people most responsible for introducing Shibari and conscious BDSM to Western audiences. In this conversation, we explore the psychology of erotic power, the evolution of Shibari over the past 25 years, why ethics transform BDSM, the relationship between creativity and desire, and what Midori has learned after decades of helping people explore sexuality with greater intention, compassion, and integrity. Whether you're curious about rope, conscious power exchange, female dominance, or simply interested in understanding the deeper psychology of desire, I think you're going to love this conversation. Enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today, I'm looking forward to exploring the erotic realm with one of the world's pioneers in sexuality education, conscious BDSM and Shibari, Midori. Welcome to the Erotic Realm, Midori.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So to start us off, what does life look like for Midori these days?
Life looks like, well, very busy. I have many different projects going. I've got a women's dominance intensive ForteFemme coming up. I've also been working more closely with mental health professionals and wellness professionals for cultural proficiency and understanding around kink and BDSM. Also doing a lot more on my art side and my studio practice as well, and being on the leadership team for the Asian American Women Artists Association, etc. So, and I think I just agreed to a writing book advising co-authoring situation, but we'll see about that one.
Oh, okay. Wow,
Yes.
so busy.
I can't say much more than that on that one, but it's going to be good.
Okay. Hopefully we'll hear about that another time.
Yeah.
And what about in your downtime? Do you have particular hobbies that you enjoy, or do you enjoy just relaxing when you're not doing all of these busy things?
I wish I had more downtime, but in terms of downtime, hiking, backpacking, I'm going to be going kayaking locally. Nice thing about living in California and San Francisco is I have all of these outdoors things available. It's been a while since I've gone scuba diving. Would like to go camping again in the desert. That'd be nice. Otherwise, going to museums and art, especially contemporary art. So things like that, and deep conversations with my very smart and insightful friends.
I love that. Sounds like a beautiful life you have. So let's jump into the erotic. How would you describe your sexuality and kinky self?
I would describe myself as queer,
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everything else which falls into check mark labels, so I tend to eschew that. And that also goes into how I teach and discuss around kink and sexuality, but queer, yes, and embracing that term both in terms of a intersectional vaster array of sexuality that is not heteronormative, but also the original word meaning weird or different. A little
Mm-hmm.
bit off,
Mm-hmm.
particularly like the way the Brits use queer in the old way.
Mm-hmm.
So I embrace that. And I suppose the kink aspect might fall under that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm sure there's a few people listening. When I labeled myself as queer, a lot of people took it to mean simply gay. And what you're speaking to is that it has a whole different, broader meaning than that, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I consider it erotically expansive,
Mm.
but also politically politically radical or political, period.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Political and socially concerned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, so as a queer person,
Hmm.
what are your top three kinks at the moment and why?
Oh, oh boy. Okay, so I am. I don't tend to answer this in like the FetLife checkmark kind of way,
Sure.
because kink is not only subjective in an individual between individuals, but also over a course of time. And I like that you put in at this moment. And kink is also subjective in a cultural context. And
Mm.
I'm nerdy, you all listeners, just okay, so you know. So kink at this time, because it might be different tomorrow if you ask me this question.
Mm-hmm.
That which, okay, I'm going to narrow the definition here for productivity and discussion's sake as that which is perceived socially transgressive or uncommon in a heteronormative current North American way. Currently, it would be about creating, co creating erotic narratives. And this could be written or verbal with another.
Mm.
So creating a story, which is different than role playing, it can overlap, but I would also put into my current in creating intense sensation and authority. And I would also put in exploring and expressing my monstrosity.
Mm. That's a cool word. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by monstrosity?
Mm. That's something that's been, as I reflect back, it also shows up in my art practice. It's been around since I've been a child. That which is beyond the human comprehension. If we're looking at it in a Jungian kind of way, it's also the shadow side.
Mm.
That which is certainly not sociable nor pro-social. That which is the aspect of myself that is not the civilized and polished.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be raw in emotion. It may also take, within my mind, I told you about the narrative aspect, the storytelling aspect. I may not be in my human form because there are parts of me that when I am in a flow, in a groove, or even in just a pleasant imaginary state, the human form is so limiting.
Mm.
And I'm a 5'1" Um, am I middle-aged anymore? I don't know. A middle-aged Asian woman who's 5'1", and I don't feel that. There are times when I feel enormous. There are times when I feel an entity of deep grief, La Llorona, for example. So monstrosity.
Mm.
I adore and value the stories of all the cultures of that, not the gods. Now, of course, I come from a uh, polytheistic culture. I come from Japan, so there's a lot of animism that I'm growing up with, but also in the stories and fairy tales, folk tales. So, yeah, I think there's a reason why werewolf porn and werewolf novels, erotic novels, are popular, as well as vampires and all those creatures. It's aspects of our erotic selves, right?
Mm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the monstrosity. And instead of shunning my monsters within, I want to make friends with them
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and give them time to come out and play.
And you mentioned that they've always been there. Have you always had a relationship with this side of yourself, or was it something that you cultivated as you grew into yourself, as you aged, as you discovered kink?
Oh, no, it's always been there.
Mm.
It has always been there, an awareness of myself as different,
Mm.
awareness of myself that creates unease in those around me.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in I am not the one who's feeling shunned, but I am aware of the other's discomfort, possible discomfort with me. And I find that very interesting. Um, there was somebody that walked through my art studio, open studio, and I was showing a piece of work that I call for my series Mothers of Monsters. And the fellow, I don't think he was all that savvy with Jungian stuff. I was like, monsters? Why? Monsters are evil. I'm like, monsters aren't evil. He said, they're not. I'm like, no, they are merely misunderstood by the villagers, and they possess amazing things that cause anxiety in others. Monsters simply are.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's like saying a storm is evil.
Hmm. And do you believe that we all have monsters inside of us?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I'm with Carl Jung on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I do. And the effort to deny it, erase it, to stuff it, to exercise it ends up in harm to self, harm to others, emotionally, metaphorically, sometimes physically.
Mm.
It also comes out in uh, roots of fascism as well. So the denial of one's complexity and the shadow aspect
Mm.
is not good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, would you say the process of meeting your monster is a way to experience liberation?
Liberation, wholeness,
Mm.
ease, being comfortable, and also figuring out what your unexpected superpowers are.
Mm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned something a little bit earlier about creating a story as opposed to role play, and
Hmm.
that they're a little bit different. How are they different?
So in role play, and it's overlapping, right?
Mm.
So role play would be, let's say, you and me, uh, physically engaging in being different entities and
Mm-hmm.
engaging in uh, erotic that may or may not include sex, but erotic interaction as those different entities, right? Whereas creating a story might simply be laying on the beach under an umbrella and telling tales of erotic adventures of creatures and beings and talking about what did happen with uh, what did happen on the island of Calypso? So there may not be action. There may or may not be action, but it is about entangling and entwining imagination.
Mm.
It's the intercourse of story.
I love that. Intercourse of story. Mm. I was speaking to someone recently and they're kind of dipping their toes into the world of BDSM. And
Mm-hmm.
they explained going to a party, a play party, and watching people undertake role play. And
Mm-hmm.
they said to them it seemed like everyone was pretending and it didn't seem authentic.
Oh,
What
interesting.
what would you say to someone that might have that view of role play?
No, I wasn't at that party. So, are there times when people are playing inauthentically and feeling awkward with it? Yeah, sure. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if if somebody asked me to play the cold governess, that's not a facet that's in me, so that would be pretending.
Mm.
But if we were creating a role where I am the consuming inanna, well, that is part of me. So I could see how going to a play party and seeing people role playing, let's assume that people are not in that awkward fake place, right?
Mm-hmm.
That that might be new to a person, and it might be that they are far from their exploratory, creative, childlike self. Because
Mm.
it's ability for imagination, it's ability for play. And our everyday selves, each of us, you, me, the one that goes to work, that goes to have dinner with our families, that's at the grocery store, doing all the adulting things, that is usually a performance.
Mm.
We are engaging in the performance of responsible adulthood. We are engaging in the performance of civility and social norms within the cultures we are. But what if we didn't have to? And what if we could step into desire and pleasure that is not celebrated by banal cultural norms, and our partners liked us for that?
Mm.
It's imagination. My definition of BDSM is childhood joyous play with adult privilege and cool toys.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
a spirit of play, and children have great imagination. Now, sometimes when I give that definition, which I've given to therapists and they love it as well, sometimes I'll have people get braced a bit and say, don't sexualize our childhood. I'm like, I'm not.
Mm.
I'm childing our boring ass adulthood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
So many of us have been conditioned that we should leave such childish things behind.
Mm.
And yet we find, now, I'm in the US, right? And this is such a productivity obsessed culture that things that you do must be productive or healthy or good for you or healing or whatever, that it must be productive. That must be a ROI, a return of investment. I'm even seeing child rearing as playtime as being educational.
Mm.
And I'm seeing play and hobby for adults needing to have a tag stuck on it that's healing or community building.
Right.
How about just go out and play a pickup game of basketball because you like it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm. Don't have
so
to
yeah,
commodify everything. Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm.
So to the person who went to the play party, now keep in mind, if this was their first play party,
Mm.
they were already a sensory, emotional, cultural overload. And a little bit of rejection of something they're uncomfortable with creates a little safety.
Mm.
So, yeah, I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my thought was that sometimes you do fake it until you make it, right? So perhaps those people were trying on a role that they hadn't tried before, or there were only some elements of it that felt authentic. So perhaps they were picking up on a little bit of pretending, but that doesn't make it any less meaningful, right?
Yes, so is playing house or teacher or doctor. Yeah, it's, when we are, whether in our childhood play or in adultness role playing, I mean, what is LARPing, right? You've got
Yeah.
you've got LARPing, you've got Ren Fair, you've got D&D, and these are places that we still get to play.
Yeah.
And are you a paladin?
So one of the traditions on the podcast is exploring a quote with you, and today's quote is actually all about this topic, and it's from Ursula Le Guin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who was an American author, and they often explored imagination, identity, and becoming fully ourselves. And one of their most famous quotes is this: "The creative adult is the child who survived." So I think you've spoken about this a little bit, but can we unpack it a little bit more?
Oh, I love Ursula Le Guin's writing. Oh my goodness.
Do you think,
yeah.
do you think humans are all born creative? And if so, why isn't everyone creative in adulthood? And do you think that that's something that we all yearn for?
All humans are creative. The fact that we can acquire language and express our thoughts, that in itself is an act of creation. I think and again, to the United States and its productive, capitalistically focused way and leaving childish things behind, there's a barrier created, a false barrier created between those who are capital C creative and get to be artists, and everyone else are not creative unless you have a capital A artist nomiker and a artistic practice, and you have to be good at it, right? You can't be like, if you're crappy at oil painting or crappy at collaging, and if it's not perceived as good or as with value, redeeming aesthetic value, the person might feel or be told that they are not creative. Boy, that crushes things,
So take us back to the beginning of your creative life. What first drew you towards sexology and sexuality as your life's work?
Oh, well, it started ending up in San Francisco in the early 90s and making friends who later I would realize were major culture makers like Carol Queen, Annie Spinkle, Joni Blank, Patrick Califia, etc., etc. And I started, this is the early 90s, the HIV cocktails were just getting ground. And I got training and volunteered with San Francisco Sex Information. And part of this was the no strings attached, free, open, and accurate, sex positive information for anyone, because so much of information was skewed by either the whole, sex equals death and sex is bad, and the abstinence education, shame around sexuality. So I was in a activist group that we actually had phone lines back then where people could call in and ask anything around sex. The ironic thing is our office was right next to the suicide prevention hotline.
Oh, wow.
So literally Eros and Thanatos. So it started in that. I actually had no idea I was good at public speaking. That was not something that I had any practice in college. And through San Francisco Sex Information, and the training was rigorous, and the whole leadership group put together and researched a really rigorous education process. In fact, the SAR program started in San Francisco, the Sexual attitude reassessment or readjustment. The SAR Foundation, which is the foundation and training for most sex therapists, sexologists, etc., started in a church basement in Castro in San Francisco. So I went through that. I went through training. I went through public speaking on that. Hell, I did safer sex demo at lesbian sex parties in the mid 90s.
Amazing.
And that was, let me tell you, live education.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, none of this diagram, none of this like banana and a condom. Oh no. Oh no. Snap on that glove.
Uh-huh. Sounds like a lot of fun was had.
Yeah, and it was also in order to, it was fun and resistance.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So you can resist and have fun the whole time if you have the right crew with you.
Definitely. Now, alongside sexuality for you is also your artistic work.
Yes.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that and perhaps what do art and eroticism have in common for you?
Okay. So I have a 2-track career, as you said. One side is my sexuality education with subject specialization in kink. And the other side is as artist. And it's two sides of the same coin. It's about creativity. I am teaching to help others be creative in their authentic selves, expressing themselves creatively, authentically, and exploring. My art side is for me, where I get to be creative and explore that which is in me. And many of the things I might not have words for, so performances are made, sculptures are made. I find that both sides about creativity, I have to have both. If I don't have the balance on that, the other will suffer if I don't spend enough time in my creative. And that's not just in the studio, right? That could just be hanging out with other people, making up stories, or hell, crafting, right? And I have to have that in order to keep my teaching mind nimble. And I need to feel the thrill of and the satisfaction of and do good work on the teaching side. And to teach, teaching sexuality, I have to understand others' experiences. Whereas the art side is internal. The teaching is externally focused.
So does art allow you to integrate the learnings from your external world?
Both helps the other.
So what does your creative process look like? Where do your ideas begin?
Ooh, okay. Sometimes it's a prompt from a curator. I have a big sculpture up in Germany in Bonn, and that was prompted by a curatorial challenge. But if not that, it often comes from that which frustrates me or that which pisses me off. So in terms of frustrating, I have a series of painting that I have. It's part of a body of work called the Evocal Project, and where I had been doing performances on stage with co-performers where I am binding them with rope and flowers and like huge flowers, like practically a tree, right? And I've done this at like the Asian Art Museum. I've done this a few times in Japan. I've done this in Europe, where I'm working with dancers and movement artists with binding their body with large pieces of floral sculpture. And then and it's beautiful. The moment's beautiful, but it can never be fully captured in photography to my satisfaction. It doesn't feel like the moment. There are some great photos, but it doesn't feel like the moment. And I experience that frustration of how do I capture that beauty and sensuality? And in this, I mean the senses, right? the aesthetics, the beauty, the motion, that moment that can never be, including the scent and the texture, the sound of the plants, the flowers, the movement, the stomping of feet. How do I
Mm.
capture? And I got this idea. There's a Japanese craft slash art form called gyotaku, which is fish printing. You print with fish. It was initially about keeping a record of the fish you caught, but of course, like so many things in Japan, we have taken practical solutions, craft, and uh, survival skills and turned it into an art form. So
Wow.
if you look at yotaku, you'll find beautiful paintings that are done by sticking paint on dead fish and printing them.
Wow. Never heard of this. How
Paper.
fascinating.
Yeah, so I started painting my co-performers, my movement artists, and then pressing paper into them. And this is literally an imprint of that moment. Now, it looks abstract. It looks like some weird Rorschach test, and that's fine because it is literally an imprint of that moment that can never be again.
Mm.
I take those prints, and then later I sit with it. I'll take one or two, and I'll sit with it and stare at it until I start to see things because our brains do that.
Mm.
I start to see things. I pick up my brush and using either gold pigment or gold leaf, actual gold leaf, and I start to create the imagery. I do this with stage performances, but also with private art collectors and art commissions. Actually, I have 2 art commissions I need to work on next month from individuals who had their experience of being with me and in rope and in themselves literally pressed into paper.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful. Your passion really shines through. So thank you for taking us into that moment.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, let's chat about rope because you've mentioned it a
Sure.
couple of times
Yeah.
just now.
Mhm.
And your name is very much wrapped up with rope as
Oh,
around
good fun. That's a good one. Yeah.
as around 25 years ago you published one of the first books on shibari in the Western world, if not the first, right?
First English language instruction book that was squarely aimed at the mainstream. Barnes and Nobles, here I come.
And the title is The Seductive Art of Japanese Bondage for anyone that wants to look it up that may not have heard of it. So what was the inspiration behind this book? Why did you write it then? What was happening for you?
Well, a small press that specialized in kink books asked me.
Mm.
She had been taking the temperature of what was happening in the subcultures of San Francisco. And back then, I know some of you who are into rope might be surprised by this, but shibari and Japanese style rope bondage was a small niche of a subculture. I swear we all knew each other. I think we did.
Mm.
And, on paper contact phone books and stuff like that, right? Paper diaries. Um, and I'd already been teaching a bit around rope, and I was certainly playing a lot with it. And I'm from Japan and also have cultural understanding. So Janet Hardy of Greenery Press approached me if I would write a book. And I'm like, okay, that's really intimidating. Okay.
Mm.
I'm a teacher, but I don't consider myself necessarily a writer. I write that which I teach, or I write that which I imagine.
Mm.
Um, so she asked me to write that, and that was the origin of it. And when we first started on that, because the subculture around shibari and Japanese style rope was so small that she didn't think the books would sell. So she made a first run printing of 5,000 copies, sold out in less than a month.
Wow.
It is still in print.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, it feels very much like the age of the rope at the moment, the time of the rope. It's very present in the kink community and it seems to be growing rapidly. Let's
I
talk.
think the internet and visual aspects of the
Mm,
internet and social media has a lot to do with that.
mm-hmm,
God, it used to
mm,
be so hard to find those imagery. Oh, a little aside,
mm,
for those of you who are looking for like actually gorgeous Japanese bondage imagery from Japan, shot well, done well, and really dirty and sexy, is check out the works of Norio Sugiura. And he's
mm-hmm.
been shooting for over 50 years.
Wow, amazing. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful work.
Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Mhm.
Mm. So, why Shibari? What was it about rope that first captivated your imagination? Can you take us into your rope journey and how it began?
Sure. Sometimes I get asked, a lot of my artwork uses raw rope, and I'll have people asking me about, oh, did you get into using rope in your art because of rope bondage? I'm like, it's backwards.
Mm.
Growing up in Japan, wrapping, tying, it's a culture that wraps just about everything. Look, in grade school, I learned how to make twine and rope as part of a cultural craft. Nothing pervy, just that everything's like tied together. The kimono, there's sacred grounds are tied together. You take your lunch and wrap it into a furoshiki. So much is tied, right? So much is wrapping, and whether it's a crude wrapping done even elegantly with the fish that you buy, or wrapping beautifully one's kimono, everything is wrapped. So, of course, in grade school, I learned how to make rope. Oh, and I have a class where I actually teach people how to make twine while telling Japanese folklore. I did that in Germany recently, and it was a big hit.
Mm.
So I also grew up in a household. My mother was a scholar of things traditionally Japanese. So I had familiarity with folk craft, and oh, the smell of the tatami mat.
Mm.
And my crib when I was a kid, and I outgrew it, but I still like trying to get into it like a cat in a tiny box. Um, my crib wasn't plastic. It wasn't, and I'm glad for that because the off gassing. My crib was a traditional farmer's kid baby crib. It was made of woven sweetgrass lined in cotton.
Mm.
I love it.
Mm.
So natural fibers, hemp and jute, even linen and wool and silk have their own scent and tactility.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how many of y'all out there have had, oh, I don't know, superhero inspired imprinting around their perviness.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be the very way back origin. Then I get into college in the US, and I don't know how we got the idea to tie each other up and have sex, and had no idea about like fancy stuff, leather cuffs, etc. So it was like clothesline, hardware store, tied to bed crudely, but in my mind I've got some residue, cultural bubbling up of wrapping bodies and capturing bodies and such. And of course, mother would take me to kabuki theater, and once in a while there would be like the bad guy captured or the princess captured. So traditional pop culture imagery, and by traditional pop culture, I mean like kabuki theater was meant for ordinary people, much like Shakespeare. So you would always have some social transgression that hinted at naughtiness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm picking college. And then I get into the kink subculture and people having fancy leather equipment, and I'm staring at it. I can't afford it. See like cages and harnesses, and I'm like, I can do that with rope. I'm Japanese. Yes, I can.
Mm.
And I end up meeting some folks that, one woman that had been a professional sub and professional dom in Japan and had moved over here, and had ropey skills, and I was introduced to her, and more formalized learning. Somewhere along in the late 90s, I met Mr. Nagaike, rest in perversion, ropey guy in Japan, and learned some things from him while translating for him. So things like that. Oh, and of course the magazines and such that because I could read, I manage to get a hold of it or obtain it from friends or borrow it from friends so I can translate for them. So multiple layers therein.
Fascinating. So because of the childhood smells, rope has a sense of home for you attached to it. Is that fair to say?
A sense of something ancient and comfortable.
And what about how rope has been perceived in general? How has the Western understanding of Shibari changed over those 25 years since you wrote this book?
Well, let's see. I really appreciate the people who are like, I like tying up or being tied up and it's sexy. And, it's like, I like tying up pretty girls, pretty boys, and it's sexy. And I like being tied up by my sweetie and it's fun and dirty. I really appreciate that for its authenticity and understanding one's own eroticism. What I am not happy about is made up history that is rampant Orientalism, right? Of the myth that Shibari or Japanese rope bondage is a direct descendant of the martial skill of medieval capturing prisoners. There's so not a direct descendant, but rather it has to do with the dark eros of any culture. I mean, how do you go from secretive martial arts to in every corner a porn vending machine? I mean, that's a big leap, right? And then I also hear things like, oh, in Japan, you must train for years to learn this complicated thing. Some people do, and they're most likely performers. Most people, Mr. and Mrs. Tanaka and Mr. and Mrs. Yamada, are tying each other up the best they can based on, get this, instruction books. Yeah, and having a good time tying each other up and fucking in a love motel. Yeah, so there's like inaccurate Orientalist, colonialist, and sexist myth like, oh, it is always women who are tied up, or it must always be slow and perfect. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's rough and nasty. You look at mid 20th century, early 20th century documentation of professional or private rope play. It's messy. It's not all perfect. So the obsession with perfection misses the point of the passion.
So where do you think this myth comes from? Is it kind of romanticizing rope in a way? Because I was told that myth about it coming from, a military background, from police, etc. Where does that come from?
In a very roundabout way, it comes from the martial. But if we go into a Western dungeon and you're looking at a St. Andrew's cross and somebody strapped to it and being flogged, we're not thinking that this is a direct descendant of the Spanish Inquisition and the Jesuits. And if somebody's getting John Willie style tied up in a hog tie, we're not thinking this is traditional Western cowboy arts. It comes from a cultural image, right? And so you could say roundabout, as Shibari as an erotic practice is essentially the bastard cousin once removed on your runaway uncle's side. There's something in the DNA there, but to say that it is a direct descendant is a stretch. It does, to your question, I think it does come from a colonialist perspective of exoticizing a very different culture. And I'll hear people say, oh, but it's a compliment. But so is the noble savage trope when talking about Indigenous Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Not every First Nation person is going to be a deep conservationist with wisdom of 7 generations.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're just a school teacher.
So there's not one right way to do shibari.
There's not one right way to do it. There are certain aesthetic styles that come from Japanese aesthetics. So, for example, asymmetry. When you consider, say, cowboy bondage, right? Or something that's more like, let's say, inspired from the lines of the Jesuits, we're talking like crosses and cages and stuff. In the Western artistic and aesthetic tradition, there's a lot of symmetry. Whereas in Japan, you will have intentional asymmetry. And I might even be enough of an asshole to say that an influence of the wabi-sabi, that which is imperfect, that which is rough-hewn. Right? So you get asymmetry as a way to create a sense of motion in the static, or to create a pleasurable, pleasurable imbalance, a pleasurable off-centeredness. The sense of stepping to an edge of a high-rise building or a cliff and looking down, you're safe. But what's your brainstem doing? That sense of exhilarating, pleasurable anxiety. So the asymmetry and the moved body creates that. Yeah. So there's certain aesthetic aspects of it. So if you look at something like Betty Page bondage, and that consider that and cowboy as traditional American bondage, it's very symmetrical and tends to use a lot of shorter ropes. And it also has a look of something that's like, I don't know, breaking an entry. It looks like, clothesline. So it creates that kind of transgression it's like that burlesque kind of way of, oh no. Just imagine me putting my hand to my forehead. Yep. So that, and you get something like the cowboy bondage, and you get skills that are inspired by rounding up cattle.
So am I right in saying that you're kind of pushing back on this almost hierarchy in shibari of, this type is better than this type, and seeing it more for like the artistic expression for what it is?
I would call it a pleasure craft.
Okay, fascinating.
Earlier I mentioned that discomfort that people feel around being an artist, right? But it's pleasure craft. It serves our pleasure. And aesthetic is a pleasure. Maybe you want to look pretty, or maybe you want to look fucked up or feel pretty. Yeah, it's aesthetics, right? And so that's part of it. There's no one right way. Hell, you go to Japan and there's no one right way to do it. You go to every different sex club or bondage bars, and it's whatever the person there that's teaching it is how they do it, with some differences, you know? Yeah, it's so there is no one right way. And I often find, I suspect, okay, these are my suspicions, that the insisting that this is high art and traditional and desexed is sex negativity wrapped in a pretty bow. Because it also, Shibari comes from sex work. It comes from porn. It comes from the bars in the red light district. It comes from people who make dirty pictures and are proud of it, right? But when it comes over and like, oh no, this is a traditional art form. Well, traditional red light district, it's like it's lowbrow. And there's nothing wrong with lowbrow. So is tattoos, and so is um, um, tattoos and leathercraft and lowriders, and yeah, it bubbles up from lowbrow,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and there's
Mm.
something glorious about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that perspective. I'm sure it'll make a few people think because, yeah, I've definitely heard those myths around Shibari through my, little bit of exploration into
Mhm.
that world. So thank you for busting
Yeah,
those myths today. Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to fault somebody that heard from somebody that they trust or a source that seems trustable, and that source heard it from somebody else, heard
Mm-hmm.
of somebody else, from somebody else, right? That's how um, myth and misinformation get conveyed. So
Right.
the person that at the end of that game of cultural telephone
Mm-hmm.
has come to believe essentially the last samurai Tom Cruise version of noble Japanese bondage, I'm not going to blame them
Yep.
because they're doing the best they can, but they are also a victim of, dare I say it, cultural imperialism and exoticization.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for shining a light on that. It's fascinating to learn more about the history of Shibari and where it actually comes from. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm. So, among your many creations is also an immersive experience, which I think you mentioned earlier, called ForteFemme.
Yes.
So, for someone hearing about it for the first time, how would you describe this experience?
ForteFemme, Women's Dominance Weekend Intensive. It's limited to 9 women
Mm.
in person, and there's written homework and work, asynchronous work that happens before. That's maybe like 10 hours, sometimes more of it, followed by 3 full days of immersive learning around. And the mission, I actually have a mission statement. The mission of the weekend is to give each person the tools by which they can find, express, and engage in their authentic power ethically to co create joy with themselves and maybe with others.
Hmm. Mm. So, what inspired you to create ForteFemme and why women?
Okay, so let me answer the why women first.
Mm.
That so often, well, first of all, I'm a cis woman. And with all the cultural baggage coming from Japan and being in the US, of be a good girl, be nice,
Mm.
be focus on other people's needs, etc. I was never good at that. I was kind of Japanese girl fail, and I'm proud of that. Um, so we are conditioned, and I say we as those socialized as women, but also the marginalized body, right? So that's not just the gender, the marginalized individual, to be taught that our pleasures don't matter, that we are validated and celebrated by taking care of others, that there are certain, for me, the gender performance, right?
Mm.
And and also for leadership, and dominance and topping is a form of leadership. So for folks who are stakeholders and the power holders in the room, And in speaking in terms of like the masculine, they get a lot of resource and validation around stepping up to power.
Mm.
And to a point that even in the business world, women in leadership so often are internalizing that they have to engage in being like the boys in order to be legitimate leaders.
Mm.
Now, engaging in dominance is a form of leadership in the bedroom. But I take it another step further, that being able to truthfully tap into our own desires and to be able to express that is not something that the marginalized bodies and women have been trained in. So knowing my own struggle and figuring out how to express my desires, to tap into it, to make friends with my monsters, it was a struggle. So yeah, I wanted to create something where women had a place where we could learn from each other, but also gut the stereotype.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. So let's dive into this deeper, because one of the traditions on the podcast is exploring a piece of research with you. And the
Okay.
research I found today is by social psychologists Eagley and Corral. And they developed what's known as role congruity theory. And this was
Mm-hmm.
while they were studying prejudice toward female leaders. So
Mm.
their research suggests that many cultures still expect women to be warm, nurturing, and accommodating, while authority, decisiveness, and dominance are more often associated with men. And as a result, women who express those traditionally dominant qualities can sometimes face resistance simply because they're stepping outside of these deeply held social expectations. And they also talk about how when women were successfully fulfilling their duties of a leadership role, they may be evaluated less favorably simply because the behavior violates traditional female norms. So, when you hear that theory, is it resonating with what you've observed through ForteFemme? Do many women arrive believing that they're learning dominance when in reality they're first having to unlearn years of conditioning around being accommodating or self-sacrificing?
To the researchers, I say, preach, amen,
Mm-hmm.
amen, sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, many of my attendees, actually most of my attendees at ForteFemme are in leadership roles. They're
Mm.
CEOs, they're entrepreneurs, they're, they are in leadership roles, and they are coming from having to put up with that bullshit and internalize it,
Mm.
right? And many of my attendees are experienced. Others have absolutely no experience. But what we're doing is really examining ethical leadership that is not aping an old message. And this is where kink comes in handy. It's think of it as a little sandbox where we get to explore that which we might be uncomfortable out in the cruel and judgmental world.
Mm-hmm.
There's this little sandbox called our playtime, and you're with your somebody who likes you, maybe many people who like you if you're lucky, right? And engaging in expressing one's true desire and power in a container that also has, because of the container of play, you have an exit strategy. You have mutuality of finding satisfaction in whatever it is you're doing. So you're already engaging with somebody that you like. There's a whole step of negotiation, the self-consent, followed by consent and negotiation, and having the guardrails. It's a place where we can explore power and leadership. And to my earlier point, the monstrosity.
Mm.
And I'm going to parallel with the researchers that a woman in leadership is considered monstrous. She has a
Mm.
skin of snake. Has a heart of ice. She must be a chimera, and be partially a beast, or at night turn into a ghost, or a beast where the head comes off and devours men, or have the pussy the size of a cave and like, suck you up. And amen to you, sister, on that. So yeah, even in mythology, right? This is why I created a whole body of work called The Mothers of Monsters, that in kink, we get to explore that and gain confidence in it, gain confidence in that. And so many of my students and ForteFemme graduates, we actually have an alumni society that's international. Woo!
Amazing.
Yeah. And they take the skills and even the co-creation skills, as well as the boundary skills from ForteFemme and from kink into their everyday. And in their sex life.
Yeah. Yes, please. You've mentioned that many of these highly successful women that you work with often almost erase themselves when it comes to their desire. Why do you think that happens? And what transformations do you see in these women that you work with?
Yeah, the erasing of one's desire, or erasing of the root of creativity of eros. And I don't mean eros as in necessarily the shagging part, but eros is creativity. It is, or to quote that great philosopher Iggy Pop, lust for life, right? Love that song, right? And in order to balance taking leadership, but also be perceived as acceptable, to the researcher's point, of focusing on others' needs, focusing on what is perceived that, oh, I should say this, I should be this way, instead of speaking up and risk being thought of as a bitch, right? So towing that line, and many of the people have come from either gender or culture, right? Because this could also be in various cultures, the firstborn son that has to take care of everyone else. So maybe socialized in the family or culture where one's own interest is considered selfish. And you hear that enough and be punished for that enough, and then you erase your own desire and then sublimate your satisfaction and fulfillment by seeing others happy. And then we walk away going, why am I not, fireworks and flowers happy? And now there are times when finding, and the part of the reason that I say collaborative and co-creation is that it's not about bowling over and ignoring other people. And it's like a good negotiation for kink, but I've also heard this from business negotiators, right? And program developers and project managers, where finding out what the goal is, and then finding out what each person brings, and finding out what each person doesn't bring, and then to create something that goes for the goal. Now, is the goal actually our goal, or am I being told that this is the goal, right? So all of that parallels between play as well as navigating family decisions, navigating in the boardroom, managing your team, figuring out vacation plans with your bestie group, and also in the bedroom.
So after working with the dominant aspect of women now for decades, what do you think society most misunderstands about female power?
Oh, so many. In the erotic realm, pardon the pun, yeah. In the erotic realm, the perception of women who enjoy dominance as somehow being experience providers and a projection screen of other people's desire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's within the kink subculture. In terms of the greater world, the two-strand simultaneous judgment of women in power that underneath it they're actually weak and at the same time a cold-hearted evil bitch. How does
Mm.
those two stay at the same place? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
Mm. Mm. Well, yeah, thank you for the work you're doing with ForteFemme. It sounds incredible. Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's also for me too,
Yeah.
you know?
Why is
It's
that?
for me too. Because so I have an agenda, right? There's
Uh-huh.
like the old boys network. I want the old girls network. I want to connect with more badass women
Mm.
who are creating a better world and better sex and happier partners. I I need these women in my life.
Mm.
It's so easy to be isolated. I'm fortunate to be in San Francisco, but I want more of us. I mean, recently I went to Berlin and I got to stay in the home of one of my ForteFemmes. Cool. I might be
Amazing.
going to Scotland to stay with a ForteFemme.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do
So,
they
you know,
say? Build
yeah,
it and they will come. Mm-hmm.
yeah, a network of amazing, badass women who's making things better for people in the world around them. Yeah.
Yes,
And people that
please.
I can talk about dirty, filthy things with. "Oh my god, are you going to this
Yes.
party? What have you done? Ooh, you did that. What's that? Ooh, how much lube did you really need?"
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for creating it. It sounds like an amazing group of women that you're creating around you. So,
That was
mhm.
amazing. I learned so much from them.
Mhm. Mm. So let's talk a little bit more about your eroticism because as
Yeah.
part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share, such as a quote, book, or movie that has influenced your erotic realm. What did you bring along today?
Oh, that's right. Like my student days, I forgot my homework. Ah, the dog.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
remind me again? Let's see.
yeah. So I just asked you to bring along something that has influenced your eroticism, and it could be anything, any piece of art, like a quote, book, or movie, just something perhaps when you were younger that you read or saw or experienced that has stuck with you and has somehow shaped your eroticism.
Ooh, so many things. And
Mm,
yet, you know, there's a short story that I came across in a collection in college,
mm,
and it made an impression. I didn't know what the impression was, but there was something that really made an impression with me. And then as I explored kink further, I would find myself going back and reading that. And recently I reread that short story again, which is the tattooist or tattooer in the short story collection Seven Japanese Tales by Junichiro Tanizaki.
mm,
It's a short tale set in a bygone day, probably Meiji, early Meiji, late Edo period, and this tattoo artist who is in quest of the perfect skin and the perfect woman to create his masterpiece.
mm,
And he comes on in the story as like he is the best in town and everybody like adores him, right? So he is in a place of social dominance.
mm-hmm,
And okay, so for those of you who might read this, this is fiction. It's not necessarily safe, sane, and consensual, y'all. It's fiction.
mm-hmm,
Okay. It's also very Japanese. And he finds that woman and he creates his masterpiece on her skin. And then the power dynamic is flipped as she awakens to her own power.
mm, mm.
Love that story. And it's translated so beautifully.
What do you love about it? What is it that really stuck with you? Do you like when the power dynamic flips unexpectedly?
In this short story, there's so much exploration of
Mm,
emotion. There is the the pride and the narcissism. There is the creative ego, the ego of the artist. There is the fear and the trepidation that is portrayed so beautifully. And then there is the transformations through pain and the transition, the liminal period of drinking in one's own and the other's suffering and feeling the shift of power and the surrender to beauty. And when an artist creates something, it becomes its own. And then, like with Pygmalion, in the end, submitting to the power of creation and the power of becoming and the understanding of, also there's an understanding of the eroticism of grief, which is, I think, is very uniquely Japanese. I think there are other cultures that have this. I just haven't gone diving into that, but it's certainly not the thing that American typical eroticism explores.
Such a deep exploration. Thank you.
It's in a short story.
It holds so much. I can see why it resonates with you from the little bit that I know about you.
Oh, the colors and the senses, and about how the writer talks about the different color of the setting sun on pale skin, or like the flash of an ankle underneath a palanquin door. Just the senses.
You've lived a life of exploration, art, and full of experience. So I'm really curious to hear your answer to this question. What is a peak erotic experience that has really stayed with you?
You are a terrible, terrible, wonderful interviewer. Oh my God. Okay. I will hold to this as my peak as judged in this moment, and
Sure.
it may be different tomorrow. But when I am on those special occasions, special opportunities with the right person, where I can have almost a hallucinatory experience. I've had a handful of those where I can feel. There was this one time when, speaking of the monster, I could feel as I was engaging in almost like a devouring dominance and sadism, I could feel the skin in my back swelling and splitting and wings coming out of it. There was that one time when I could feel that I was not touching the ground, that I was moving just inches above the ground, that I was gliding. There was that once when I felt myself melting and covering the floor. And I am not on any drugs other than ink. Right. So to be able to experience these, and it has to be the right person that also holds that container for me. And yeah, they need to be experienced and open to queer experiences. Yeah. So yeah, those.
How transcendent. Have you created art from those experiences?
Stories. I've written fragments of those are in some of my fiction, some publicly available and some only meant for individuals.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing. It sounds incredible. So, what about the future for you? What's something in your erotic future that you're looking forward to experiencing?
Ooh, okay. This sounds really pedestrian, but having more time? Having more time. The future of it. Finding more of those transcendence making, hallucination inducing my partners who are conduits.
Mm-hmm. Conduits. Ugh, I love that. And what about in terms of looking ahead for looking into the future for sexuality education? What are you excited
Um,
about there?
I'm been really excited about reaching further into working with mental health and wellness professionals.
Mm.
I have presented at the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. I presented at the Sexual Health Alliance. I'm working closely with the Rouse Wellness group to helping professionals. And I don't mean just therapists, anyone who is a helping professional. This could be a school counselor.
Right.
This could be a activist sex worker, but particularly the mental health and the medical professions where I want them to understand what ordinary, delightfully ordinary and healthy kink is versus that which is not. And, they can both look similar from the outside, you know, both might have like bondage stuff and wacky, wacky, pokey, pokey, but it can be quite different. I want people to speak with and work with kink practitioner humanely, compassionately, and to know how to check their own judgment. And yeah, I'd like to see the wellness industries changing towards more compassion and understanding of the complex nuances of kink practitioners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so excited to see that happening as well. And I'm hearing more and more of it happening, which is just amazing coming from, when I was studying psychology, we were still in the DSM as mentally
Oh,
unwell.
yeah.
So it's amazing to see that turnaround. Yeah, how
Yeah,
incredible.
and for the listeners, the DSM or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual is the insurance line item book of illnesses, but it's also a collection of what's deemed unhealthy
Hmm.
and pathological. And it was only in 2013
Yep.
that kink and BDSM, consensual BDSM, was taken out of being judged pathological. So for
Hmm.
those of you listeners, 2013.
Yeah. And that's why there's still so much stigma around it as well. We're still in the early days of
Yeah,
releasing ourselves from that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for the work you're doing with that. That's amazing. Where can listeners find out more about you, Midori, and ForteFemme and everything else that you're creating?
Yay. Best place to find me. And I'm really proud of this because I've got loads of resources stuffed in there. And live office hours twice a month is my Patreon. So that's patreon.com/Planet Midori. And otherwise, I've got and if you can't find that, just go to planetmidori.com. That's my website.
Mm-hmm.
And on social media, guess what? I'm on as at Planet Midori, except for FetLife, where I'm on as Midori because I was an early adopter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are the live office hours that you're doing? Is that where you're available live?
Yes, it's
Uh,
a live Zoom office hour where we can talk about anything and everything. It's not a class because I'm not going to pretend to know everything.
mm-hmm.
I will have, I'm your auntie, so I will have opinions, but I also turn to the room. People coming there are really wise and kind, and not surprisingly, I have a lot of mental health professionals there as well.
Mm.
So about 2 hours twice a month. And there's half of it is not recorded for privacy and more nuanced conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And half of it is recorded for things that, well, can be recorded and people can look at that. And I have many of my videos, class videos and writing, and even some of my fiction in my Patreon. But yeah, the office hours Yeah, ask me anything. We'll talk
Cool.
about things, art, travel, kink, whatever.
Love it. Okay, amazing. And finally, if you had to describe your erotic self in one word today, what would that word be and why? Difficult?
Uh, oh, geez. Okay. And again, committing only for today,
Hmm.
but I would say, ooh, let's see, the chimera.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
chimera, for the listeners, are mythical creatures that are put together by all sorts of different parts. Like the Sphinx is a chimera, head of a woman, head and bust of a woman, body of a lion, sometimes tail of a snake, and wings of an eagle. So chimera banshees um, are chimeras. And why? Well, the earlier reference to monstrosity and the different facets, the pretty face, nice body, claws that'll rip you to pieces, and a really bad hair day like Medusa. Yeah.
I love it. Hmm. Well, Midori, your work has consistently invited people to approach desire with greater curiosity, creativity, integrity, and compassion. And I think that's an extraordinary legacy. So thank you for all of the art and pleasure that you are spreading in the world. It's much appreciated. And thank you for taking us into your erotic realm today.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Erotic Realm podcast. This is an independent podcast, and if you want to see more episodes made just like this one, you can support it at psychologyofdesire.com by becoming a paid subscriber and entering the realm with many other supporters. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize kink and desire in all of its forms, and we can't do that without you. So until the next time, stay perverted.